latest book is called Coming Full Circle, Ancient Wisdom for a Modern World. And I am so excited about this book. It's my 20th, and I can hardly believe that I have written all of these books about these extraordinary women of power, all the magnificent, wonderful things that they have taught me over all these years. Coming Full Circle was kind of a difficult book to write because I wanted to take the stories, the experiences that I have had, some of them which I had never written about before, and make them more accessible. The teachings are unusual because all of the teachings that I give and have received are through the process of experience. So how do you take an experience, say, in the Himalayas or in the jungles of the Yucatan, and make that something that somebody can use as a lawyer on Wall Street? So I took special stories, and at the end of the stories, I have an article, in want of a better word, an article and sort of an explanation of what was most important within that experience, so that someone can read that and go, oh, now I understand, and I can use this as something extraordinary in my life, something I never realized before. For example, when I was in the Yucatan with Zoila, one of my teachers, she got me out of the hammock early one morning, and she said, come, we're going to take a walk. And I followed her down the trail, and it had been raining the night before, so it was kind of slippery. And it was beautiful, and the smells of the jungle and the earth were so prevalent. And pretty soon, we came to a little clearing in the trail. And all of a sudden, I realized that we were at the edge of a cliff. And I could look down into what they call La Caldera. And La Caldera is a great canyon somehow dug out by nature thousands, millions of years ago. And there was a little trail going down the side of this canyon. And she said, come, follow me. And I said, Zoila, I am terrified of heights, number one. And number two, I can't follow you. The trail is too narrow, it's slippery. I don't have the proper shoes on. And she turned to me with the coldest eyes you can imagine. And she said, you follow me, or we will no longer dream with you, no longer work with you, and that will be the end. And I knew, after working with these women for many years at this point, that if I didn't follow her, it would be the end of my learning of this ancient wisdom. So I took a look at where I was surely going to fall, and I thought, well, I'm going to follow her, and most likely I am going to slip and die. So I went hugging the side of the canyon down this little trail, slipping and sliding, and she went off ahead of me, and then she came back, and she said, I have left a gift for you, and it is very sacred, and I want you to take that gift and bring it to me at the bottom. So, and then off she went. And so I'm still slipping and sliding and terrified, and I come around a corner, and there in a nicho in the wall is this beautiful ruby that she had left for me. And the most incredible jewel I've ever seen. And I went up to it, and I held it, and it was so gorgeous, and it reflected the light in prisms of color. And I said, I don't deserve this. I can't take this. I'm not worthy of this jewel, this gift. And I put it back down. And I followed the trail down to the bottom to a very angry teacher who said, where is the jewel? And I said, I'm not worthy of that jewel. I couldn't take it. And then all of a sudden I realized that I was stuck in some kind of quicksand. And I kept sinking into this quicksand. And I got up to above my knees, and I was terrified and screaming at her. And of course, she had an easy way to get me out of there. And she said, I'm not going to help you till you understand that you have to find your self-worth, and you can carry that ruby or anything else valuable in your life. You can not only take it for yourself, but you can share it with others. And that is how she teaches. Now, it may be difficult for people reading a book to understand exactly what she was trying to say. I was stuck in the quicksand of my addiction to being, to having a feeling of no self-worth. I was stuck in it, just like quicksand, and actually it was quicksand. And finally she did help me out of there. But she wouldn't help me out for hours and hours until we had talked about this, and I realized how I was living my life and that I was not allowing myself to hold the jewel. And probably one of the great teachings that I've ever had. And so after an experience like that, or story, then I would have an article after that that would explain it, like I've been talking with you. Ancient wisdom is as important and timeless today as it was when people first experienced it. There really is no difference from someone 5,000 years ago who needed to survive, needed a happy relationship, needed to experience the beauty of life in one way or another, needed to feel a sense of perhaps godness, creative power in the world. All of these things, abundance, all of these things are what we want today. But we think, we know so much today. We've got all this technology, we've got all of this wisdom, and we think we don't need to delve into the history of what brought us here in the first place. We don't have to learn from some old Native American woman like Agnes Whistling Elk. Why should we go to her for wisdom? Because she has lived a long, long time, and she has dedicated her life to understanding what the currents and the harmonies and the energies of this earth really are. Shamans, I'm a shaman. Shamans have known for centuries about black holes, about how to emanate light from within themselves, as they do in the Himalayas, as they did in ancient Egypt, for instance. Shamans have known things that can help you find the gifts within yourself, to realize that magic happens every day of your life. But we refuse to see it. We refuse to acknowledge the beauty and the power that we really are. Fear comes from what I call, and a lot of people call, writers and teachers, comes from, I believe, I have experienced, and by the way, I don't ask you to believe anything, I just talk about what I've experienced, and you can take that for what it's worth. I have experienced that the ego mind, in want of a better term, is a conditioned part of the brain. And the ego mind has been conditioned since childhood. And I've noticed in my travels around the world that probably 90% of the people on this earth come out of some kind of abuse. And when that happens, when you have abuse as a child, you never have a childhood because you're always being careful. You're being careful of what, your dad might do if he saw you. So you try to be invisible so you won't get hit. And as a result of that kind of training, when you get to be older, you have this instilled fear within yourself. And it's part of the ego mind. The ego mind is not part of the heart. The heart is full of love, full of the good, wonderful, creative emotions in life. The ego mind fills you with fear. So, if you have fear, you know that there's something in your ego mind that needs to be dealt with and identified and healed. Then you take also that fear, take it down into your heart, and you let it be transformed in the heart into something more beautiful, into fearlessness, into an integrity, into an aesthetic. You can make beautiful objects of power out of all of your emotions. The emotions that are negative, you could make, for instance, a rattle like this. And you could put little pieces of sand from, say, your mother's grave, or things that were negative in your life, maybe things that you never were able to truly deal with, as in death, as in fear, as in all of the negative things that we carry in our lives. You could put that into a rattle, and then when you play it and you use it in a ceremony, all of a sudden it's transformed into something beautiful, useful, and it is contained. And you can paint pictures on this rattle that mean something to you, only to you, part of your emotions. Paint what fear looks like. What does fear look like really? And what does love look like? You can't really describe the unknowable. Those are parts of the unknowable, the mystery, that shamanism opens that world for you. And so then you have a rattle that maybe represents darkness inside, but has been transformed into light in your life. I had an incredible experience in Nepal. We flew into Kathmandu. I had no idea what to expect. But you know, when you think of a country like that, you think of silence, quiet, beauty, early beginnings of social life. Well, we flew into Kathmandu. I've never heard so much noise in my entire life. What I didn't know is that when you drive a cab in Kathmandu, they never stop honking the horn, whether there's anybody there or not. There were trekkers that were coming in at the same time. Everybody was yelling and calling and whatever. It was a very different experience than I expected. And then you go out into the street with the sacred cows and the dirt and the smells that are so different from anything you've ever had. And when I did fly in that particular time, Ani, a Nepalese hill woman, met me. And she's part of this incredible gathering of women that I work with. So this knowledge and wisdom that I talk to you about is from all over the world. It has nothing to do with tribal Native American or Aboriginal Australia or anything else. It has to do with a universal consciousness, really. Anyway, Ani, she was draped in silver and coral and turquoise and so elder that her face was just lined like road map of China. She was fabulous, wonderful woman, and had the spirit of somebody 20. And she took me across on a Nepalese bus to her home, which was quite a long ways from Kathmandu, very close to the Himalayas, to the foot of the Himalayas. And days went by, we worked together, and one day I mentioned to her that I wanted to meet with a healer that I had heard about. And this healer was supposed to be something incredible. And Ani just looked at me like I had lost my mind. I mean, here I was with one of the great healers probably that had ever lived, named Ani, and I wanted to go see this other healer. Finally, she agreed to take me. Oh, she was mad at me. She wouldn't speak to me. She put me on the bus with her and the goats and the chickens and everything else that was in this bus. And we went quite a ways to right at the foot of the Annapurna Himal. And we got out and went to this village. And the villages look kind of like Native American Southwest villages made out of adobe and so forth, kind of squarish buildings. And we went to kind of this little square in the middle of this village, and we sat with everybody else waiting to see this healer. And finally, we were asked to come in. And this healer was sitting on the ground with wax paper and little rice offerings in front of her. And we walked in the door, or the curtain, and this woman took one look at me and started screaming at the top of her lungs that I was going to be killed, that there was a terrible sorcerer who was after me. And of course, I immediately thought of Red Dog that I wrote about, in particular a medicine woman. And she scared me out of my wits. I thought surely I was going to die at any moment. And of course, she saw my blonde hair. She knew I was American. She knew that I could be of service to her in terms of money or goods or whatever. And she was just having a fit. She said, I can heal you, but you have to stay here. And you have to bring me 3 chickens tonight. We'll do ceremony. I don't want to let you go through the night. Now, she is speaking in Chepang with Ani. And all of a sudden, I thought Ani was going to explode. She took me by the scruff of my neck and threw me out of the hut, closed the curtains, and then I hear this screaming in Chepang between these 2 women. And pretty soon, Ani comes out and grabs me and says, we're leaving. And I said, we can't leave, I'm going to die. This woman is going to save me from Red Dog. Oh, and she was so furious. And she dragged me up to the road, and into the bus we got, and we went back towards home. And about halfway towards home, we stopped for a rest, and she made me some tea by the side of the road. And she began to talk to me in this very quiet voice. And she said, in your world, there was a great scientist. There was a man named Einstein. And I was very surprised to hear her talking about Einstein. And I said, I didn't know you knew him. She just went, shush. And she said, listen to me. And she said, Einstein was searching for the truth in terms of numbers, in terms of the universe. And finally, one day, the theory of relativity came to him. Now, when that happens to a person, real power, we could say, that kind of power comes into a person, they no longer ever would consider harming another life form, another human. And I looked at her for a minute. I couldn't quite put the 2 together yet. And then she said, if someone were really going to harm you, they would have to have extraordinary power. So therefore, if someone is trying to hurt you, they don't have the power to do that. And I just looked at her, and then it became really clear. There was no Red Dog that was going to kill me. There was no sorcerer coming after me. It was the fact that I had given away my power to this so-called healer. I gave it away because we were in this exotic place, because she was so extraordinary looking, because I had put it in my mind that I was still not totally worthy. And therefore, when she told me that I was in danger, I just believed her. And that's why Ani was so angry. She said, how could you have given away your power to that woman? How could you? You should be ashamed of yourself. And I got it. It was one of the best, another one of the best teachings I ever had. Because people come to me all the time And they say, Lynn, how can I protect myself? And I talk to them about a lot of things that we don't have time here to talk about. But one thing I tell people is that if you can be hurt or pushed by someone in a way that is very difficult for you, you know that you have an ego that you need to deal with, because it's your ego that's getting pushed, and it's part of yourself that isn't real. And the best protection that you can ever have is your own total vulnerability. So that if someone pushes against you, they don't find you, they just push right through you. And there's nothing there. This book at this time, because of what we were talking about before, there is so much that people need. People are looking, their souls are looking for beauty. Their souls are starved to death because we've taken so much beauty and ancient wisdom out of our lives. We're not teaching our children music. We're not teaching our children literature. We're not working with ourselves in areas that are aesthetics. We are going into technology, into vocations. It's a different world today. And this ancient knowledge takes you out of this technocratic world, and I'm not saying that that isn't good. It's a magnificent thing to have cameras, to have computers, to have extended your arms so that you can do so much more. It's cybernetic meadows, if you will. However, we have lost how to see, and shamans teach you how to see. So ancient wisdom is another way of seeing. If you see through the process of story, you are taken to a place of truth within yourself that most people can't find very easily. It's the truth of a poem. The strength of a poem is between the words. It's in the harmony of the way the words are strung together. You can look at a painting and you see just paint, or you can look, say a Van Gogh, and then you can look at a Van Gogh and you see the power that is held there. There are many ways of seeing, and I see the lack of that, such a deep need for that in the world. I really have experienced over and over again these extraordinary women that incidentally are all elder. It's a celebration of elder women that people don't seem to quite get that. These women are so powerful and so able and so full of wisdom and music and humor. I guess humor is one of the most important things of all. And I look at people walking down the street in New York and I think, oh my God, they've lost their humor. What are they doing? Where are they going? They don't see the sky and the clouds in these gorgeous skyscrapers moving up towards the horizon. It's beautiful. And I think it's time. It's time for people to remember story. With the Gutenberg press, the elders lost their place in life. And why? Because everybody in the clans, in the villages, would go to the elders to hear the stories that would teach them. With the Gutenberg press, with our magnificent books in the printed language, which is now finding its way into another technology, we've lost storytelling. Native Americans, some of them, called the storytellers the twisted hair. And the twisted hairs had great twisted hair coming down, and they would gather people together and they would tell these stories that would teach them something. And I believe that these stories change your life. and they change your life in a way that you really desperately need today. I've written all my books in story form so that you could go along with me through these experiences. When I went to Australia to be with Ginny V in the Outback, I wrote all of this as a story, not a how-to book, but exactly what happened to me. And as a result of that, I think people, in a way, rewrite these books as if it is them on this journey, not just me. What I want them to take away from this book are three things. I want them to take away the concept of beauty and aesthetic, that beauty is so important in our lives. That's number one. How do you find beauty? What is your aesthetic? What is the light on the mountains trying to tell you? What is the beautiful tree in the park saying to you as it stands like a sentinel, you know, hour after hour, century after century in some cases? So, and then the second thing is that we're all creative. We all have a creative soul. And I hope my book, I know my book, will help you find that. I know that that's a promise. I think you can find your creative abilities. And thirdly, I think you take away from reading my book a new dream. As you read this book, dreams begin to form in your mind and in your heart about what it is that you truly want to do in this lifetime and maybe have not acknowledged ever before.